Nastaprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttamasloke bhaktir bhavatir naishtuki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Nigamakalpataror galitam phalam sukamukadamrita samyutam vivata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasika bhuvibhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadev Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Nama Pankajanabhaya, Nama Pankajamalini, Nama Pankajanetraya, Namaste Pankajandri. So Hare Krishna, everybody. Let's just see. So we have completed chapter 15 last time, and what these were some of the subtopics which were covered. Basically, we heard how the Pandavas retired. Why they retired? They retired from their kingdom because Lord Krishna already left the earth. So this was already foretold by Narada Muni. And just as how Narada Muni instructed them that when this happens, you should retire. So Yudhishtra Maharaj, as soon as he heard this from Arjuna, he began the process of renunciation. And we heard how each of them, the Pandavas, Kunti Maharani, Draupadi, all of them had attained the same destination. So once that happened, then we heard how Kali, which was held in check, just waiting for Lord Krishna's lotus feet to leave the earth. And as soon as his lotus feet left the earth, Kali Yuga appeared fully. But it was not yet completely prevalent because there were still saintly kings which were keeping Kali Yuga in check. So we will hear about this in today's chapter, chapter 16, how Parikshit received the age of Kali. So just to give an understanding about why we are now talking about Parikshit, it's because in the beginning of Bhagavatam, it was described how the sages in the Naimisharanya forest, headed by Saunaka Rishi, they were asking Suta Goswami, what was the, they were asking a few questions, 6 questions they asked. And one of the questions was, who was the speaker of Bhagavatam? And we heard about the appearance of Sri Narada. And then from Narada, we heard about Narada's instructions of Srimad Bhagavatam to Vyasadeva, and then the conversation between Narada and Vyasadeva, and how Srimad Bhagavatam came about. And then the sages were also wanting to know about Vyasadeva. So all these chapters 4, 5, and 6 discussed these questions, addressed these questions. And then after that, the sages also wanted to know who was the person Bhagavatam was spoken to. So we know that is Parikshit Maharaj. And before he spoke about Parikshit Maharaj, Vyasadeva had to actually, Sukadev Goswami, he gave the chronology of events leading to the time where Bhagavatam was spoken to Parikshit Maharaj. So he didn't just start with Parikshit Maharaj's birth just like that. He began with how the history of Parikshit Maharaj. So chapter 7 talked about how the son of Drona was punished, Ashwatthama. Now, why this was mentioned? Because this brought about the point of how Parikshit Maharaj was saved by Lord Krishna in the womb of his mother, Uttara. So it narrated the story of how Ashwatthama released the Brahmastra, and the Brahmastra was meant to kill the baby within the womb of Uttara. So that baby was Parikshit Maharaj. So this is where it was introduced. And then after Parikshit Maharaj was saved by Lord Krishna, who came into the womb and destroyed the Brahmastra and gave back a new body to Parikshit. So then Kunti Maharani was very taken over by gratitude. So then she gave lots of nice prayers to Krishna. Just when Krishna was about to leave Hastinapur and return back to Dwaraka. So at that time, Kunti Maharani gave very nice prayers to Krishna. So we heard that. And then after that, but Yudhishthira Maharaj was still very, he was not pacified. So it was discussed how Krishna purposely put Yudhishthira Maharaj into illusion so that the glory of Bhishma Dev could be brought about. So it was basically setting the scene for the birth of Parikshit Maharaj. So how Parikshit Maharaj was saved, and then before the narration brought about Parikshit Maharaj, the passing of Bhishma Dev, which was a very important point, was also discussed. Because here it shows how a person can leave the body and attain Krishna's lotus feet. So then chapter 10, because the point of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam was basically the glorification of Lord Krishna. So chapter 10 spoke about the departure of Lord Krishna for Dwaraka. So wonderful descriptions, wonderful discussion about the ladies of Hastinapur, Sanjalpa, how they were gossiping amongst themselves about Krishna. So that's we discussed this also in chapter 10, and how Krishna left Hastinapur and his journey to Dwaraka. And then in chapter 11, Krishna's entrance into Dwaraka was discussed very nicely, how the citizens of Dwaraka received him, from the various people, from the prostitutes all the way to the kings, to the queens, to the queen mother, and how each of them reciprocated with Krishna, and how Krishna in return beautifully reciprocated with all of them. So after that, now the scene is set for the birth of Emperor Parikshit. So after Krishna already left Hastinapur, eventually Parikshit Maharaj was born, and this was described in chapter 12. And chapter 13 sets the scene for how Parikshit Maharaj came to be the king. So at that time, Yudhishthira Maharaj was the king. So how did Yudhishthira Maharaj leave, and how did Parikshit Maharaj come to be the king? So the scene had to be set. So the story about how Dhritarashtra quit home, how Vidura came, and how Kunti Gandhari and Dhritarashtra and they all attained liberation, that was discussed. And after that, the disappearance of Lord Krishna came about. So chapter 14 discussed the disappearance of Lord Krishna. So why disappearance of Lord Krishna was discussed? Because this set the scene for the coming of Kali Yuga. So Kali Yuga and Parikshit Maharaj have a history. So therefore this was discussed. And after Krishna disappeared, then the Pandavas also retired timely. So that incident was discussed to show how Yudhishthira Maharaj relinquished the kingdom without any kind of attachment, and that set the way for Parikshit Maharaj to be enthroned. So now we have chapter 16 about how Parikshit Maharaj became king and how he received Kali Yuga. So it begins with this verse 16.1. Suta Goswami said, "O learned Brahmanas, Maharaj Parikshit then began to rule over the world as a Mahabhagavata of the Lord under the instructions of Dvijavarya, best of the twice-borns." So here it shows how Maharaj Parikshit followed the traditions of Yudhishthira Maharaj by following the advice by ruling with the vision of, guided by the vision of Brahmanas, the best of the Brahmanas. He ruled by those great qualities which were foretold by expert astrologers at the time of his birth. Now, chapter 12, during the birth of Emperor Parikshit, Srimad Bhagavatam discussed many wonderful qualities of Parikshit Maharaj when he was just a baby. How the Brahmana astrologers, they foretold how he will be such a great king. So all those prophecies came to be true. Maharaj Parikshit indeed became an amazing Maharaj, amazing king, and he ruled over the entire world. So Prabhupada gives some interesting points here. So Maharaj Parikshit was therefore a devotee of the first order, a Mahabhagavata devotee. And thus, because he was a devotee means they will never do anything without consulting their guru, consulting sadhus. So he always consulted great sages and learned brahmanas who could advise him by the shastras how to execute the state administration. There was no need for impractical fools, Prabhupada says, to enact daily a new legislative bill. Just like currently we have parliament and all that. So daily, or at least weekly, they will come and meet and enact new legislation, new laws. So Prabhupada says there was no need for this, right? And to conveniently alter it again and again, just to serve some particular purpose. The rules and regulations were already set forth by great sages like Manu, Yajnavalkya, Parashara, and other liberated sages. And the enactments were all suitable for all ages in all places. So it's not like now where it's some new law is created just to suit a particular political party for them to get more power or to stay in power, right? So this was not the case at that time. Therefore, the rules and regulations were standard and without flaw or defect. So then Prabhupada also continues, kings like Maharaj Parikshit had their council of advisors. So this was the way to rule a kingdom, and also to rule, like even the GBC, they are like the council of advisors. And all the members of that council were either great sages or brahmanas of the first order. So why this is important? That's why Prabhupada says, purity is the force. We have heard this statement from Prabhupada, right? Books are the basis, purity is the force, right? Preaching is the essence, and utility is the, what do you call? Sorry. Books are the basis, purity is the force, preaching is the essence, and utility is the principle. Yes, principle. So it's very important to guard the purity of the leaders of society. If the leaders of society lose their purity, then you can imagine nothing will work out right? So like that, the brahmanas are the heads of society. So if the heads of society lose their purity, then society will naturally go to hell, isn't it? So therefore, they did not accept any salary to maintain their purity, nor had they any necessity for such salaries. They were all self-realized souls, and they knew perfectly well how all living beings in the state would be happy, both in this life and in the next. Lord, can you? So and then the verse continues. King Parikshit married the daughter of King Uttara. So he married, and he begot 4 sons, aided by Maharaj Janamejaya. So later on, Bhagavatam will also speak about Maharaj Janamejaya. But for now, it's just indicating. So Maharaj Parikshit, after having selected Kripacharya. So who was the guru of Maharaj Parikshit? So Maharaj Parikshit had Kripacharya. Kripacharya was also the guru of Yudhishtra Maharaj during the time after the war. So, and therefore, when after Yudhishthira Maharaj left, Kripacharya still maintained, and he was guiding Parikshit Maharaj. So by his guidance, Parikshit Maharaj performed 3 horse sacrifices on the banks of the Ganga, and they were executed with sufficient rewards for the attendants. So naturally, after a sacrifice is performed, it's very important that the sacrifice is not complete unless sufficient remuneration or rewards is given to all the brahmanas who performed the sacrifice. Okay, so this is the same. Nowadays, sacrifice also is not complete unless prasadam is given to everybody. So the same point is given. So the sacrifice was done in such a way that the Bhagavatam says that in this sacrifice, even the common man could see the demigods. Deva Yatrakshi Gocharaha. So that is during those days in Dwapara Yuga. So fire sacrifice still had its potency. Why? Because the Brahmanas still had their potency. They still had the power to invoke devas just by the power of their sacrifice. So it said that people could, even common people could see the devas appearing due to the result of this sacrifice. So Maharaj Parikshit is setting the standard how one should rule a kingdom. It should be based on sacrifice. So anyway, after Maharaj Parikshit, one day, Maharaj Parikshit, he wanted to reconquer the world. So the world was already conquered by Yudhishtra Maharaj, but whenever a new king takes the leadership, though all the kingdoms were still giving tribute to Maharaj Parikshit, but Maharaj Parikshit had to ensure that his rule is strong. So therefore, he again went visiting all the different kingdoms all over the earth, just to establish his rule, to show that his rule is not challenged. So this is how kings used to do in those days. So while he was going, he happened to see the master of Kali Yuga. Now this is Kali personified. And he took a guise of being a Shudra. So Kali was like a Shudra, lower than a Shudra, in fact, lower than a Shudra. But this person, lower than a Shudra, Kali personified, he was disguised as if he was a king. He was wearing the clothes of a king. So this is a prophecy for what Kali Yuga will be. So Kali Yuga will be full of leaders who are people who are lower than even the Shudra, fifth class. Because even Shudras had good qualities. Their good quality was faithfulness, right? So, but then nowadays, there are people who are even lower than Shudras, who are leaders of society. So Prabhupada said, the age of Kali means mismanagement and quarrel. And the root cause of all mismanagement and quarrel is that worthless men with the modes of lower class men who have no higher ambition in life other than simply getting money and wealth and fame, they come to the helm of the state management. So this is what's happening. And Prabhupada says that such men at the post of a king are sure the first thing when they come to power, what's the first thing these people will do? They will hurt the cow. They will condone cow slaughter, and they will also condone the destruction of the Brahminical culture. So they will cause this to happen. Why? Because they know that these two are threats to their, because they are threats to their power. To destroy the Brahminical culture means that the low class people can become powerful. So they will destroy the Brahminical culture. And when Brahminical culture is gone, then cow protection is also gone. And then when these two basic support of human civilization is gone, then society will go towards hell. So this is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam very analogically by using the cow, how Kali Yuga took the form of a king, and this king is hurting the bull and the cow. So this verse says, this personality, this Kali Yuga personality, he is hurting the legs of a cow and bull. The king at once, Parikshit Maharaj, at once when he saw this, he caught hold of this person to deal sufficient punishment. So Prabhupada continues, he says, human civilization means to advance the cause of Brahminical culture and to maintain it. Cow protection is essential. So he goes on to say there is a miracle in milk, for it contains all the necessary vitamins to sustain human physiological conditions for higher achievement. So Prabhupada has said this many times. He said that milk is very important. Why? Because not only it's able to give food, it's a complete food and gives full nourishment for the person, but more important than that is it nourishes the finer tissues of the brain, so that one is able to understand better spiritual conclusions or spiritual knowledge. So drinking milk, it's very beneficial for one to understand things in the mode of goodness, particularly Shastra. So that is why we cannot accept the vegan proposal of not accepting milk. Yes, we know milk is, uh, unfortunately, the way it is being obtained these days, it's not very humane. But nevertheless, still, we can't do without it, because we need this miracle food in order to develop finer intelligence, so we can understand the subtleties of scripture. So Brahminical culture, and that's why, ISKCON is trying to establish cow protection, so that these kind of bad practices are not going on. So Prabhupada continues that Brahminical culture can advance only when man is educated to develop the quality of goodness. So that's very important. And for this, there is a prime necessity of one eating food, eat in the mode of goodness. And what is food in the mode of goodness? Like milk, fruits, grains. So these are food in the mode of goodness mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. So this will help one to come to the mode of goodness. And once one is in the mode of goodness, then one will be in a more Brahminical state of mind. And therefore, one becomes conducive to understand spiritual knowledge. So then Saunaka Rishi inquired, Lord, can you off that fan? It's very noisy. Saunaka Rishi inquired, why did Maharaj Parikshit simply punish him? Since he was the lowest of the Shudras, having dressed as a king and having struck a cow on the leg. Now, just now the Bhagavatam verse said that Maharaj Parikshit, he punished him suitably. So usually when someone hurts a cow, such a person is immediately killed. Now this was done during Vedic times. So Saunaka Muni was amazed. What? Parikshit Maharaj didn't kill him immediately? Why did he just punish him? So he was intrigued. Oh, this is something interesting. So then he said, please describe all these incidents if they relate to the topics of Lord Krishna. So it's not that Saunaka Muni was happy to digress away from the narration of Sutta Goswami, because Sutta Goswami is talking about Bhagavatam and Lord Krishna, right? So Saunaka Muni wasn't wanting to digress. He wasn't wanting to go away from the topic. So it's interesting, though it raised his curiosity, he made it clear that please speak about this only if it relates to Krishna. Krishna Kathashrayam. Otherwise, they are not interested to hear, even no matter how interesting it may be. So very important verse in this. So the next verse, Bhagavatam 16:6, gives this very beautiful verse. Atavasya padam boja makaranda liham shatam kim manyer asad alaper ayusho yat ashad vyayaha. The devotees of the Lord are accustomed to licking up the honey available from the lotus feet of the Lord. So therefore, the Lord is known as Padam Boja. So Padam Boja means lotus feet. Makaranda liham, licking just like a bee, or makaranda, a bee will lick up the honey from the lotus feet of from the lotus. So just like that, just like how the bee always is attached to the lotus, so much so that sometimes the bee will even stay within the lotus and the lotus will close, and the bee sometimes dies in it. But the devotees are so attached to the lotus feet of the Lord. So they always, what does that mean? It means one always wants to hear more and more about the Nama, Rupa, Guna and Leela with regards to the Supreme Lord. Therefore, Saunaka Rishi says, what is the use of topics which simply waste one's valuable life? Ayusho, Ayush means life. Yat asad vyaha. So what is the use of such topics, discussing other things, other than anything which is relating somehow to the lotus feet of the Lord? So Prabhupada also gives a very nice comment here. Our duration of life is not very long, and there is no certainty of when we shall be ordered to leave everything for the next stage. So, Bhakti Vinod Thakur also sings like this in his song, Talamala, Jivana Talamala, in the song Bajahure Mana. So it means that our life is like a drop of water tottering on the tip of a horn, or the tip of the lotus petal. It's like a tottering. Anytime it can drop. So like now you can see COVID is in the air and so many things are happening. Anytime people can just leave the body. So, and that's not even that, it's not just because of COVID. It can happen anytime. One can just take the car and go outside. There's risk in everything that we do, isn't it? So suddenly someone can get a heart attack. Suddenly someone can get into an accident. Suddenly they may get a blood clot in the brain. So anything can happen at any time. So Prabhupada says, thus it is our duty to see that not a moment of our life is wasted in topics which are not related with Lord Krishna. Right? Any topic, however, however pleasant, is not worth hearing if it is devoid of its relation to Krishna. So we need to tell this, we need to hear this again and again. We need to tell this to ourselves again and again, so that one day we will follow this fully. Especially when we get more and more realization of how precious life is. Hopefully, by hearing this again and again, it will sink into our brain. But the first thing is, at least we must accept this, because theoretically, at least we must accept. Unfortunately, there are many people who don't accept these things. So if we don't even accept, how are we going to understand these points? So therefore, we need to hear scripture with faith. So Prabhupada concludes here, those who want to live forever, that means those who are not kripanas, not miserly people, they want to live forever without changing their material bodies, what they should do? They should not waste valuable time with topics other than those relating to Lord Krishna and his devotees and his seva. So this is Prabhupada's conclusion based on Bhagavatam. So then Sutta Goswami continues, there are those amongst men who desire freedom from death and to get eternal life. So, they escape the slaughtering process of repeated cycle of birth and death by calling the controller of death. So that's an interesting point. How do we call the controlling? So Saunaka Goswami is saying that, Sutta Goswami is saying that devotees actually call Yamaraj, call death. Now these are all the different, now death is not uncommon. In many, many societies, death is a common practice. It's a common accepted deity. Like this is the Lord of Death in Chinese culture, right? He's the Lord of Hell, and what he does, he's like a judge. So that culture is there also, even in Chinese culture. And then, of course, in Christian culture, we have the angel of death, right? The reaper of souls, they call him. So in Tibetan culture also, this is a picture of death. He is also the Lord of Hell, and he judges people according to whether they have done right or wrong. So in Egyptian culture also, we have the god of death, Anubis, right? And then also in Roman and Greek culture, we have Hades in Roman Greek culture, and we have Pluto in Roman culture, who represents the god of death, right? So they all come from Vedic culture only, ultimately. And the controller of death is none other than Yamaraj. So devotees call Yamaraj. How do devotees call Yamaraj? Very interesting point. So Krishna is Sutta Goswami says, how they call him? As long as Yamaraj, who causes everyone's death, is present here, no one shall meet with death. Na kaschin mriyate. So that's his strategy. The strategy is that whenever topics of Krishna are discussed, Yamaraj is sitting in that group. And when he is sitting in that group, he is not doing his work. He has stopped his work. So therefore, those people who are hearing this, hearing these topics of Krishna or about the devotees of Krishna, they are actually hearing it together with Yamaraj. And because they are hearing together with Yamaraj, Yamaraj is friends with them. So therefore, Yamaraj will not bring them to his kingdom. So they escape death. So Prabhupada says, therefore, the only hope of suspending the cruel slaughtering process of Yamaraj is to call him to hear and chant the holy name of the Lord. So then the great sages have invited the controller of death, Yamaraj. So you can see here, Yamaraj is also sitting with them, right? And and he is a representative of the Lord. Yamaraj is none other than one of the Mahajans, great souls, right? And he is a devotee of the Lord. So just like Hanuman, who is always present wherever Ram Katha is going on, so Yamaraj is also always present when Krishna Katha or Ram Katha or Vishnu Katha is going on. So then Sutta Goswami says, living beings who are under his grip, that means all the conditioned souls, should take advantage by hearing the deathless nectar in the form of this narration of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Hari Leelamritam Vachaha. Vachaha means speaking. So by speaking and hearing about Hari Leela, one escapes the clutches of death. One never goes to Yamaloka and one never takes birth again. So this is a very interesting point. So Prabhupada says, Yamaraj is a great devotee of the Lord, and he likes to be invited to kirtanas and sacrifices by the pure devotees who are constantly engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. So we have made Yamaraj our friend by becoming devotees. So therefore, devotees never need to fear Yama. Whereas the lazy human beings with paltry intelligence, mandasya manda prajnasya. So mandasya means lazy, manda means short or paltry intelligence, prajna means intelligence, short intelligence, and a short duration of life. Vayo manda usas, so short life. What do? They pass the night sleeping and the day performing activities that are for naught. That means useless activities. Vyartha, useless. Karma bihi, activities which really doesn't bring anything in return. What are these activities? Basically, activities which are working on Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. So these activities, it's like basically a merry-go-round. So simply working, it's like a rat race, one who simply is working and working and working, doing his duty. Why? So that he can get artha. Artha means wealth. So that he can collect and he can be secure. Why he wants artha? Why he wants security? So he can indulge in his kama, desires. So after he's bored of it and after he's gone through some ups and downs, then he says, oh, okay, I just want to be free. So then they want moksha. But then after that, they again come down to dharma. Then artha, kama, moksha, artha, dharma, kama, moksha. Like that, it's a circle. It's like a merry-go-round. So these are miserly people, karpanya dosha, right? Or lazy human beings. So they don't understand the real purpose of human existence. So the Shastras remind us of this again and again. By hearing this Shastra, our conviction and our determination strengthens each time we hear it. Right? So then Sutta Goswami continues, while Maharaj Parikshit was residing in the capital of the Kuru Empire, the symptoms of the age of Kali began to infiltrate within the jurisdiction of his state. So he started to notice symptoms of Kali. We already described this previously in the time when Lord Krishna was leaving the world, right? how, there is quarrel everywhere, even within kingdom, even within family, within ourselves, within brothers, within sisters, husband and wife, family members, everything, even for the smallest thing. And they're quarreling over money, quarreling over wealth, all kinds of very petty things. So it's an age of quarrel, and nobody accepts whatever they say, hypocrisy. Everybody will say one thing, but everybody will act in a different way. Truthfulness is not maintained. Nobody is bothered about honor, truthfulness. They will simply say, but nobody will keep their word. So age of hypocrisy. So these things he started to notice in his kingdom. So therefore, although he had conquered the entire kingdom, still he thought, let me go and see what is the cause of this happening. So when he learned about this, he did not think the matter was very palatable. He didn't accept it. He didn't say that, oh, this is natural. After all, Kali Yuga is about to come. Lord Krishna left, and we know that Kali Yuga is about to come. So, this is normal. So we should. So he didn't think that way. He immediately went to check it. I must stop this. I am the king. It is my responsibility. Never mind if destiny says Kali Yuga has to come, but I will do as much as I can to halt it. So that was Parikshit Maharaja's thinking. So this did, however, give him a chance to fight. So therefore, he took up his bow and arrows and prepared himself for military activities. So Maharaj Parikshit sat on a chariot and drawn by black horses. His flag was marked with the sign of a lion. Being so decorated and surrounded by charioteers, cavalry, elephants, and infantry soldiers, he left the capital to conquer in all directions, to see what is the problem, why these symptoms are coming. So Prabhupada, he gives his purport over here. He says that, basically he says that although things are bound to be negative in the Kali Yuga, but devotees or those in responsible situations like kings or saintly kings, they will never accept it for granted. Even though fate is meant to be that way, they will never succumb to fate. They will never say, if you can't, they don't follow this proverb. If you can't beat them, then join them. The English, they have this proverb. If you can't beat them, then join them. That is not accepted by saintly kings and devotees. They will always be on the side of Dharma. So even with Kali Yuga pressing them, even with very unfavorable situations coming our way, right? Nevertheless, the devotees will never say that it is all right, how to fight against all these things. They will always try their best to uphold the four principles of Dharma, right? Truthfulness, cleanliness, satyam, saucham, tapa, austerity, and what's the other one? Cleanliness, truthfulness, mercy, daya. Yes. So Maharaj Parikshit then conquered all parts of the earthly planet. Now, when he says earthly planet here, it means not just the earth, it means Bhuloka, the entire Bhumandala. So we won't go into that now in detail because this is very technical matter about the geography of the Bhumandala. So this is described in Canto 5 in Bhagavatm. It's also described in Mahabharata. So it's like, Bhumandala is surrounded by Jambu Dweep and then by the ocean of salt water and all that. So it's a very technical matter, but basically what it means is Maharaj Parikshit went to conquer all over Bhuloka. Not only this current earth, he went all over the Bhuloka Mandal, within this plane of existence, and tried to see where is this Kali, or what's happening, why is this happening. So when he was doing this, when Parikshit Maharaj was going around all over Bhumandal, wherever, so the verse is tatra tatra, wherever, here and there, everywhere he went, everywhere the king visited, he continuously heard the glories of his great forefathers. That means who are his forefathers? The Pandavas were his forefathers. So he was hearing about the glory of the Pandavas wherever he went. How wonderful Yudhishthira Maharaj was. How righteous. What such a great defender of Dharma Arjuna was. So like that, and about Bhima and Nakula and Sahadev, and about Kunti Maharani and Draupadi. So like that, he was hearing about all their glories. Now all these people were gone already. Parikshit Maharaj, when he was ruling, the Pandavas were no longer on earth. So he misses them. And when he hears about all these people, right, and they are discussed here as Maha Atmanam, great souls. And also he heard about the glories of Lord Krishna, how wonderfully Lord Krishna, what were his wonderful glories, how he killed so many demons, how he was so sweet in his reciprocation to his devotees, right? He also heard how Atmanam cha paritratam ashvatamo astra tejasha. So he heard how he himself, Atmanam, was paritranam, how he was saved from Ashwatthama's Astra weapon. How he was saved from the Teja, the extreme glaring effulgence of the weapon of Ashwatthama. So we all know how he was saved by Lord Krishna when Ashwatthama released the Brahmastra weapon. So Parikshit Maharaj was saved. So he remembered again, and he heard this pastimes being sung by other people all over the Bhumandal. People also mention the sneham, the beautiful friendship or relationship, the sweet reciprocation between the descendants of Vrishni and Pritha. Pritha is Arjuna. Descendants of Vrishni are the family members of Krishna, right? Like Kunti Maharani, like Ugrasena Maharaj, like Satyaki, like Akrura, like Uddhava, all these people, and how they had such wonderful relationship with Arjuna. Why? Due to the latter's bhakti. So they were also related with each other because Arjuna was having such wonderful bhakti for Keshava. So the unifying factor in this relationship of different people was that bhakti for Keshava. So this is the unifying feature. So the king being very pleased with the singers of such glories. So these glories this wonderful narration were all sung by different bards. Bards means the musicians. Those they put it nicely in different rhythm, in wonderful poetry, and they were singing this. Why they were singing this? Because when Maharaj Parikshit visited all the different kingdoms all over Bhuloka, he was received very nicely with royal reception, right? And in royal reception, just like now we see how the Agong, when he is received, there is the gamelan, the gamelan music in the background. So like that, when Parikshit Maharaj was received, there was wonderful narration, beautiful poetry, and nice musical display about the glories of Krishna and the Pandavas. Just like how Lord Ramachandra also heard glories of the Ramayana from Lava and Kusha and everywhere else. So in the same way, Maharaj Parikshit also heard the beautiful narration of the Mahabharata. So out of magnanimity, he was pleased to award them very valuable necklaces and clothing. So Maharaj Parikshit heard that out of his causeless mercy, Lord Krishna, who is universally obeyed, rendered all kinds of service to the malleable sons of Pandu. So it's a very interesting use of this word, malleable. Malleable means is usually used for metals. Like some material is very brittle, like glass. Can you bend glass? It's not possible, isn't it? It'll just break, it'll crack. Whereas you can bend metal, isn't it? If we can take some metal, we can bend it, we can shape it into different things, like a paper clip. A paper clip is basically bent metal. So material like that, which you can bend without breaking, is called malleable. So the sons of Pandu, the Pandavas, were very malleable to the instructions of Lord Krishna. So whatever Krishna will tell them, they will unquestioningly obey. So this is the characteristic of one who is a devotee, right? Whatever instructions is given, therefore, one of the 6 symptoms of surrender, according to Bhagavatam and also according to Rupa Goswami in his Nectar of Devotion, the first symptom of surrender, the first symptom of surrender, there are 6. The first symptom of surrender is one should accept whatever that is favorable for devotional service as mentioned by the scriptures or by Guru. So one should not say, oh, I've already done this, so I don't have to do that. I already, everything that is favorable, one should do. One should try our best to do. So that's why devotees, we don't say, oh, we only chant Hare Krishna, we don't worship Tulasi. Oh, I already chant Hare Krishna, I don't have to do Arati. I don't have to worship the deity. I don't have, no, everything that is beneficial, we do. We observe Ekadasi, we observe festivals, but it is guided by the Shastras and guided by Guru. So that is one of the symptoms of surrender. And the Pandavas were just like that, right? And Krishna was also, Krishna is very, now this is a very interesting verse because it's not talking about the Pandavas, it's talking about Krishna. Krishna who is malleable, not Pandavas. Krishna as Vishnu is universally obeyed by everybody. All the devas obey Vishnu. But here, Krishna is obeying the instructions of the Pandavas. Now, Yudhishtra Maharaj is elder brother, he's elder, and as king, Krishna would, what to speak of Yudhishtra Maharaj, he was even obeying Arjuna as a charioteer. Arjuna will say, go here, go there, Krishna, and Krishna will do it. So such was the relationship Krishna had. And what was he doing? Yeah, you can see here the picture. He was acting as a charioteer for Arjuna. He was Saratya, charioteer. He also acted as worshipable person, president. Prabhupada translates the verse here as president. So here he is referring to the time when during the Rajasuya sacrifice, Lord Krishna was selected by Yudhishthira Maharaj as the best person to receive worship. So therefore, Krishna accepted. He also accepted. So therefore, he was serving as president. He was also serving as messenger. So Krishna was sent as messenger during the Mahabharata, before the war started, right? Pandavas, they asked Krishna, can you go to Duryodhana and plead for our case? So he was doing this for them. He also was their friend, Sakya. And he was Veera Ashana. He was a night watchman. So he actually watched over the Pandavas when the Pandavas were sleeping. There were some incidences like that. So Prabhupada translates it in English as a night watchman. So the Sanskrit here is Veera Asana. So while one is sleeping, asana means sleeping, he was the Veera, that means the guard. He was guarding over the sleeping Pandavas, according to the will of the Pandavas. So Krishna was simply moving according to the will of the Pandavas. So, we say that we don't want to become servant of God. So because we don't understand what that servant of God means. It's not like material world. So nobody wants to be a servant in the material world. But in the spiritual world, everybody wants to become the servant. Because the master is such a wonderful master, Krishna. And he's to be a servant of the master is even more sweeter than to be a master. That's in the spiritual context. So therefore, and what to speak, Krishna. So Krishna here is such a servant. He is of his devotees. So Krishna, he's Lord Vishnu himself says in the Padma Purana. He tells Lord Shiva, those who worship me are not my worshippers. Those who worship my worshippers are my actual worshippers. And Krishna also tells the gopis, there is no way I can I can repay the debt I owe to you due to your bhakti. I cannot repay your bhakti. He tells that to the gopis. Such were the depth, such was the devotion. So even, Vilva Mangal Thakur, he sings in his Chaurastakam, right? He says, I have caught you, Krishna. I have caught you in the cage of my heart. You cannot escape, right? You are a thief and I have caught you. So this is how the devotees can actually catch Krishna. The relationship is extremely sweet. So even though they are servant, Jivera Nityada, Jivera Swarupa Hoy, Krishnera Nityadas. So even though their relationship is so sweet, even though the relationship of the Jiva is a servant, but this is the nature of that wonderful, loving relationship. Krishna was obeying them like a servant. So all this was mentioned in the verse. And offering obeisances like one younger in years. So Krishna used to offer obeisances to Yudhishtra Maharaj. He was playing the role, or even Kunti Maharani. So Kunti Maharani is elder to Krishna. So he will play just like that. So this kind of relationship is very sweet. Oh, please stop that. So Prabhupada says, simply by appreciating the dealings of the Lord with his pure devotees, one can attain salvation. So this is very nice. Simply by relishing how wonderfully Lord Ram had such sweet relationship with his devotees, or how Krishna is having such sweet relationship with his devotees, simply by relishing it and experiencing it, one can attain salvation, Prabhupada says. So the Pandavas were so malleable to the will of the Lord that they could sacrifice any amount of energy for the service of the Lord. How is it that Krishna could be conquered by these Pandavas to so much of extent? So Prabhupada is giving the reason. Because the Pandavas were willing to do anything for the Lord. Because the Pandavas were willing to do anything for the Lord, therefore the Lord also was willing to do anything for the Pandavas. So this was the wonderful relationship. So because the Pandavas were so malleable to the will of the Lord, they could sacrifice any amount of energy for the service of the Lord. And by such unalloyed determination, they could secure the Lord's mercy in any shape they desired. So this is the secret of the Bhakta. That's why Yenna Daivam Sedanal Yashoda, right? Yashoda could catch Krishna and chase Krishna and cause Krishna to be in fear, right? And she could tie Krishna. So this is the power of the devotee. It's not that we want to do all this to Krishna. So we understand the point. The point is we want to have a wonderful, sweet relationship with the Lord. And the Lord gives himself to us. Because we are willing to surrender to him, the Lord gives himself to us. So that is the wonderful, wonderful treasure of the devotees. The wonderful Chintamani treasure. So that's why Arjuna wanted Krishna. He didn't want Krishna's army, whereas Duryodhana wanted Krishna's army. So this is how materialists, they want to enjoy the kingdom of God. They don't understand that God is so much more sweeter. So Arjuna understood. He doesn't want the kingdom of God. He doesn't want Narayani army. He wants Krishna only. Even though Krishna is not going to fight, and even though they were vastly outnumbered, but still they thought Krishna was enough. So this is devotee. Even in the Bible, it says, let not one, what use is one who gains the world but loses his soul, right? So we want Krishna, we want God in our heart. And for Krishna's sake, we should be ready to sacrifice the world. Therefore, this is the pure, unalloyed devotion, pure devotion. So when he heard this, Maharaj Parikshit became overwhelmed with bhakti. So why are we talking about all these things? We are talking about all these things because we want to establish, Bhagavatam wants to establish the character of Parikshit Maharaj before the full narration of Parikshit Maharaj pastime comes. So we can know about it. So Parikshit Maharaj, from here we can understand he was a Mahabhagavata devotee. He became overwhelmed with bhakti unto the lotus feet of Krishna, Charanaravinda. And so we have this beautiful verse. This beautiful verse is the one I just mentioned, how Krishna became the Saratya, the charioteer, how he became the Sakya, the friend, right? How he became the messenger, Dautya, how he became the Veera Asana, the night watchman. So very beautiful verse which shows. So let's just see it. Saratya Parashada Sevana Sakya Dautya Virashananu Stavana Pranamam Snigdeshu Pandushu Jagat Pranatim Cha Vishnu Bhaktim Karoti Nirpatis Charanaravinde. So it's a very sweet verse. Hopefully one day I can remember it. So then Suta Goswami continues. Now you may hear from me Ascharyam, the wonderful, amazing story. So he's saying, now you can hear from me the amazing story of what happened while Maharaj Parikshit was passing his days, hearing of the good occupations of his forefathers and being absorbed in thought of them. So while Maharaj Parikshit was going from place to place, hearing about the wonderful pastimes of his forefathers, the Pandavas, hearing the wonderful pastimes of Krishna and the beautiful relationship and reciprocation between them. So while he was immersed in bhakti, in this way, he came upon Kali. So this is when he came upon a very interesting situation. Kali personified, taking the guise of a Sudra who became a king, a Shudra king, and he was hitting and beating the bull, a bull and a cow. So this was described in the beginning of this chapter. But after this, from this verse onwards, Suta Goswami will narrate the full story of what happened. What happened to the bull? What happened to the cow? Who are the bull? Who are the cow? What they represent? And what happened to them? And how Parikshit Maharaj came into the scene. And it's a very interesting story. A lot of interesting lessons there for us to learn. So this we will describe after this. So therefore, we stop here, right? So what have we covered? We have covered Maharaj Parikshit as the emperor of the world. We discussed how he was the emperor of the world, how he married and had 4 children, of which the main one is Janamejaya, and how Parikshit came across Kali right in the beginning, right? And how and this is what we discussed today up to verse 17. So next session, we will talk about the conversation which took place between the bull, Dharma, and between the cow, Dharani, and how suddenly at that point, Maharaj Parikshit came into the picture. So with that, I'd like to end here. Thank you very much. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, kripa sindhubhya evacha, patitanam pavanebhyo, vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you very much. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai.